The chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass of California, joins us now. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. We saw incredible images yesterday, thousands of people peacefully protesting across the nation. You're a Los Angeles native. You witnessed the Rodney King riots firsthand. How does this moment compare to what you experienced and saw 28 years ago?
Well, first of all, this moment is incredibly inspiring to see people all across the country saying enough is enough, and also to see the multiracial character. In many cities, you look at the protesters, and there are very few African Americans. So the solidarity with what is happening in our community and have been happening for a very long time is very inspiring, and I am hopeful that it helps us get the legislation passed that we need to do.
We've seen other disturbing videos from the last few days, including one showing police violence in Buffalo when two officers shoved a 75-year-old man to the ground, which resulted in a serious injury for him. In Tacoma, a man died after being forcibly restrained by police. In March, in Atlanta, a woman broke her clavicle after a police officer body slammed her to the ground. I understand that the Congressional Black Caucus, which you chair, is going to present legislation of potential ways to try to stop these kinds of problems. Can you give us an idea of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Tomorrow we will introduce a bill that covers several areas. One is police accountability. It was shameful what happened to that man. Not only did they push him down, but they walked right past him and then wouldn't even let an officer render aid. Our bill that we're going to be introducing tomorrow, Justice and Policing Act, would cover those. So in other words, those officers shouldn't have, no, when they saw him push the officer down, push the protester down, they should have rendered aid. The other officers should have intervened and said that shouldn't happen. Those are the type of practices that we want to see ended, and with the legislation, with accountability, and with the transparency and the emphasis on training, we believe that we'll be able to address those type of situations. It's time for police culture in many departments to change, and we believe that the legislation will make a major step forward in that direction.
You'll have to get it through the Senate in order for it to become law. Do you have any Republican allies in the Senate on board with the legislation?
Well, let me tell you that we are introducing the bills together. So Senator Harris, Senator Booker are taking the lead over in the Senate. They've been working on that side, and we have work to do in the House as well. But you know what? I think we're in a real moment in our country. The passion that the people are displaying. I'm so glad now that the protesting is peaceful. It's been every day. It's been across the country. I think that it is going to lay the basis for the momentum for us to bring about the change that we need to do. I mean, let me give you an example. Right now, there's no way to track officers that are problematic. So the officer that killed George Floyd, if he was not arrested, he could have simply gone to another jurisdiction and been hired. We need to look at the training that is done with law enforcement. We need to do things in accountability, transparency, and training that we believe would make a big difference. That officer that killed Tamir Rice, who was 12 years old, actually had been fired from another department.
That's right. He'd been fired from the Independence, Ohio Police Department and lied about it on his record when he applied for the, I think, Cuyahoga or Cleveland Police Department.
Exactly.
But just to translate, it sounds like you don't have any. It sounds like you don't have any Republican allies in the Senate as of now. I mean, it's early yet, but sounds like that's what you're saying.
Well, I believe that there would be Senate allies. I'm not over there, so I'm not sure. Rand Paul is one who had been an ally before. Once he gets past the lynching issue, hopefully he'll be an ally again. But I will tell you that in the House, I had a meeting the other day with the Problem Solvers Caucus, and that's a bipartisan caucus. Now, that was before we had the bill. We're going to go back and talk to them now. But I found there was a lot of interest. There was a lot of support. I found out that one of my Republican colleagues was a former police officer. Another one's son is a police officer. They were appalled by what happened to George Floyd, and they believe that no profession wants to have bad apples. And there also needs to be standards, national standards for policing. We need to look at the best practices. I think that there's a lot of things that we can do, but this bill, I believe, is a bold piece of legislation. It's transformative. I've been in Congress 10 years, never seen anything like it.
So, Congresswoman, you're talking about reforming police, but as you know, a lot of people on the left, including CBC member Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, are talking about defunding police department, disbanding police departments. What do you make of those calls?
So, you know what I think is really needed? And I think that part of the movement around defunding is really about how we spend resources in our country. And I think far more resources need to be spent in communities to address a number of problems. Now, I don't believe that you should disband police departments, but I do think that in cities, in states, we need to look at how we are spending the resources and invest more in our communities. So one of the things that we have in the bill is a way to provide grants to community-based organizations around the country so people can begin to say, what is public safety in our community? What do we want to see? Maybe this is an opportunity to re-envision public safety.
Congresswoman Karen Bass, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, thanks so much.